The Second World War was a defining moment in American history that changed many things about the world in which we live. World War II fundamentally changed the way in which wars are fought. Developments in weaponry and tactics made during World War II changed the face of warfare. Throughout this podcast, I will discuss the development in infantry weapons during the Second World War. In a previous podcast about weapons of the American Civil War, we discussed how new industrialization had made mass production of weapons possible. This was even more true before and during World War II. The assembly lines used to create consumer automobiles were adopted for the creation of war machines. The industrialization generally matched the development of a new tactical paradigm by German military minds. Hoping to avoid the war of attrition experienced during the years of World War I, tacticians came up with the rapid mechanized strategy known as blitzkrieg, or lightning war. The development of new infantry weapons would also reflect this shift in tactics and strategy. At the beginning of the war, nearly all of the armies involved fielded essentially the same bolt-action rifles that had been carried by their troops during World War I. A bolt-action rifle fires slowly, requiring the soldier to manually pull back the bolt to eject the spent cartridge and load a new round after every shot. The German Mauser Kar-98K, the standard weapon of the German army in World War II, was a shorter carbine version of the standard-issue German weapon of World War I. By the end of the war, over 11 million Kar-98Ks had been produced. Other armies also made slight improvements on their World War I rifles. The British Lee-Enfield rifle went through a couple different iterations before the Lee-Enfield rifle No. 4, Mark I, became synonymous with British troops in 1940. The Lee-Enfield was so popular and reliable that some of the millions of weapons made throughout the war still crop up in combat zones today. The United States fielded its Springfield Model 1903, named for the Springfield Arsenal in Illinois where it was manufactured. While the United States would later develop and issue a semi-automatic rifle to its troops, iterations of the Springfield 1903 would remain in service with the United States Army all the way through the Vietnam War because of its accuracy and reliability. Other widely used bolt-action rifles of World War II include the Japanese Arisaka and the Soviet Mosin Nagant, both the standard-issue weapons of their respective nations. As the tactical realities of World War II became more and more apparent, armies realized the importance of putting weapons capable of a heavier volume of fire in the hands of their soldiers. The United States became the first nation to equip its soldiers with the self-loading semi-automatic rifle, with the M1 Garand. The M1 was developed by a French-Canadian man named John C. Garand in the mid-1930s. The weapon was durable and reliable, and became synonymous with the American GI during World War II. The downside of the M1 was its 8-round magazine that could not be reloaded. When the magazine was spent, it produced a distinctive ping as it was ejected from the rifle. Still, these problems did not outweigh the rifle's greatness, which saw service until 1959. The M1 also came in a shorter, lighter carbine for use by vehicle crews and airborne troops. Other armies soon jumped on the semi-automatic bandwagon. Fyodor Tokarev developed the SVT-40 for the Soviet Red Army in 1938. Between 1939 and 1945, some 2 million SVT-40s rolled off Soviet production lines. While fighting against the Red Army on the Eastern Front, the German Army captured units of the SVT-40. The German engineers copied the SVT-40's mechanism, while also applying the superiority of German engineering. The result was the Gewehr 43. Fitted with telescopic sights, the accurate Gewehr 43 proved an effective sniper's weapon. However, it would not even approach the numbers of Kar-98Ks produced and ultimately would not affect the German war effort. In the later years of the war, the Germans would develop another excellent weapon that would ultimately not be produced in large enough numbers to affect the outcome of the war. German engineers sought to create a weapon that could fire on full automatic like a submachine gun, but fired a full-powered rifle cartridge. The result was the Sturmgewehr 44, or STG-44. Originally, Hitler prohibited the weapon's development. However, the weapon continued to be developed and soon proved its usefulness on the Eastern Front. Hitler eventually gave the gun his blessing. The STG-44 has the distinction of being considered the world's first assault rifle. While it had little effect during World War II, weapons designers after the war looked to the STG-44 for inspiration in the development of a new class of weapons. Most notably, Mikhail Kalashnikov heavily based his AK-47 design on the German weapon. The AK-47 is currently the most widely used small arm in the world. In addition to the development of semi-automatic rifles, another class of weapon flourished during World War II. Submachine guns were so called because they were capable of fully automatic fire like regular machine guns, but they were more portable and fired smaller, less powerful rounds than their larger counterparts. Submachine guns were developed with the same ideas in mind as semi-automatic rifles, that on the modern battlefield, soldiers needed to be capable of producing a larger volume of fire. The first submachine guns were developed at the end of World War I, but did not see much use in the conflict. In 1921, the Thompson submachine gun, developed by Brigadier General John Thompson, went into the commercial market where it immediately won respect. However, it would be several years before the U.S. Army saw the value of the weapon. The Thompson was adopted first by the U.S. Marines in 1928. When World War II began, production of the weapon increased dramatically, and it was adopted by other branches of the American military and sold to other Allied armies. The Thompson was a complicated machine, and was thus not produced in the same numbers as other, more simplified designs. The Germans successfully developed a simple submachine gun which, thanks to steel pressing and sub-assembly, was capable of being mass-produced. The MP40 was widely used by the German army. Smaller plants were capable of producing the component parts to be assembled, and factories were capable of keeping up with demand even after the German invasion of the Soviet Union. Over 1 million MP40s were produced throughout the war. Perhaps the most widely produced submachine gun of the war was the Soviet PPSH-41. Like most Soviet designs, the PPSH-41 was robust and resilient, capable of withstanding dirt, grime, and mishandling. It was also incredibly powerful, capable of reliably firing up to 900 rounds per minute. Throughout the war, the Soviets produced more than 5 million of these weapons, making the PPSH-41 a staple of the Red Army soldier. World War II was a modern industrial conflict that, through the development of new weapons and tactics, changed the face of warfare forever. Many of the weapons developed during World War II, such as the German STG-44, heavily influenced the creation of modern military firearms. Some of these weapons are even still in service in combat zones around the world today. If you'd like to learn more about World War II and see some of these weapons in person, pay a visit to the Virginia War Museum.